Welcome to Contemporary First Nation Voices, NBE 3C. This is grade 11 English, college level. Teacher is Jillian Percy. Today is class 1, and we're going to be looking at the study guide and the introduction to Unit 1, as well as question 1, Part A. All right, if you are unfamiliar, this is all the ways to connect. If you want to talk to me while I'm in the studio, 1-800-465-7144. If you want to reach me at the office, 1-800-667-3703, extension 2211. You can hand work in 1-800-463-7852 through the fax. You can also email me, jillian.percy@nnec.on.ca. My Facebook is gpercywasa, and you can kind of see the little picture there of me if you're looking for it. There are 2 different YouTube channels that I save classes on. One is the teacher channel, G Percy Wasa, which has a playlist. Hasn't started yet because this is the very first class, but anyways, it will exist, of NBE 3C. And then over here is the school channel, which has all the stuff from all the different teachers and will, again, by the end of the week, start to have classes posted there as well. Okay, how to hand in work. If you are handing assignments in by photograph, if you need to take a photograph of an assignment, please make sure the photo is nice and clear so that your writing can be read. And you want to make sure that your camera is exactly parallel with your assignment. If the assignment is at a slant, then it can be very hard for me to accurately read your writing, okay? Also, if you are doing this with your phone, please don't just hit the share button if you're using email. When it does that, the picture comes up at a strange large size, and it takes me quite a while to kind of go through, play with them, and get them to shrink down to a proper thing. But if you save your photos to your phone or computer and then send me an email and add the photo as an attachment, then it comes up beautifully and it's very easy for me to print off. Whenever you hand in work, send it to studentwork@nnec.on.ca. When you do this, the secretary can log that you submitted the work. Always include your full name, the course name, the assignment number, and the name right on the physical page, not just in the email, okay? If an assignment asks for both a rough and a good draft, please label which one is which and include them both in the same email. Okay, so this is my first time teaching this course, so normally I kind of have this all planned out. I'm still figuring things out as I go right now, but normally each class I'll kind of show you a quick spot of what the plan is for the week and where we are. We are right here on class 1. I'm still figuring out class 3 and 4. I have the material, so I'm figuring out how far we'll get. You never know. All right. Okay. So right now we're in the study guide. It's got a lot of the information you need in order to get started. It doesn't have any assignments, but does just have kind of a lot of the stuff that you need to start, okay? Right here, you can see a bunch of the most basic information that we just kind of went over. So if you're ever stuck and thinking, I can't figure out how to get to her, this is what you would do. You would just give me a phone call or send me a note on the Facebook. Yep, or a note to my email there, okay? Okay, so here's our introduction. Welcome to English College Preparation. This course explores the themes, forms, and stylistic elements of literary, informational, graphic, oral, cultural, and media text forms emerging from First Nations, Métis, and Inuit cultures in Canada, and also looks at the perspectives and influences of texts that relate to those cultures. In order to understand contemporary text forms and their themes of identity, relationship, and self-determination, sovereignty, or self-governance, students will study the use of text forms by Indigenous authors or creators from other periods in expressing ideas related to these themes. Students will also create oral, written, and media texts to explore their own ideas and understanding, focusing on the development of literacy, communication, and critical and creative thinking skills necessary for success in academic and daily life. This course is intended to prepare students for the compulsory grade 12 English college preparation course. Okay, how to work through this course. Each of these units is made up of 5 lessons. Now, a lesson does not mean one lesson is one assignment. It's more like one big concept. Each lesson actually has a series of assignments that need to be completed. In this course, you must complete all the key questions. Be sure to read through all the material presented in each lesson before trying to complete the assignments. You may send in the assignments for each lesson as soon as you've completed them. Begin work on the next lessons right away. Do not wait until you receive your marks back from the first ones. Important words. Important words are highlighted in bold-faced type throughout each unit. You may wish to keep a separate notebook to list and define any important words or concepts throughout this program. In order to do this course, here are the materials you need. You need the textbook called Strength and Struggle by Rachel Machinen and Pamela Toulouse. There's a movie, Muffins for Granny by Nadia McLaren. We don't give you the movie, but I have a link for it if you aren't sure where to find it. And then there's two books, Shishi Etko and From the Ashes, okay? Originally, this course included two more children's books, but we took out those two assignments. That was a lot of textbooks to be sending up to people. If you have one of the older copies where it's still listing all 5 books, send me a little message and I'll send you a newer version. But if you've already completed assignments relating to those 2 children's books, that's fine. Go ahead and hand them in. If you don't personally have a copy of these, we should send them to you. Often the Community Learning Center will have them. Once you're finished with them, if you could return them to the Learning Center when you're finished, that would be awesome because they are quite expensive and it's easier for us to kind of keep a little stash there than to send them up to every single student, okay? Okay, what must you do to grant a credit? You must successfully, in other words, you must pass the key questions for each unit and submit them for evaluation within the required time frame, and you must complete the final examination, okay? See this little key symbol? Questions with this symbol are called key questions that give you an opportunity to show your understanding of the course content. Ensure that you complete these thoroughly as they will be evaluated. The easiest way to submit work is by email. The email address is located on the title page of the course. Using a word processing program will not only make your work look neat, the program will also indicate to you where you might need to make changes to your spelling and grammar. This is an invaluable tool to help you improve the quality of your writing. You can also scan or photograph your written work and send it as a PDF file or as a photo. Faxing is also possible, although the quality of the work is not necessarily as good as a digital copy. It can look a little bit faded sometimes. Finally, you can send your work through the mail, but that is time-consuming and it will take a while to get back to you. If you do that, please make sure to get a photocopy. Sometimes things have gone missing in the mail, and there's nothing more frustrating than to have finished like 10 assignments and have lost them all in the mail. So I actually don't encourage mail unless it's really your only possible way to do it, okay? This is a new course for me, so I am changing some assignments as we go along. When that happens, I will always accept either the original version that you've got or the new version that I've created, okay? There's usually a really important reason why I've created a new version. So it's a good idea to pull that one if you can, but I'm fine with taking the original if that's what you got, okay? Your final grade. Each of the units has 5 lessons. All of the work from those units adds up to 70% of your grade. And then there's a final exam, which is worth 30% of your grade. We always need somebody to supervise an exam. If you're in a community that does not have a learning center with a DEC who can supervise things, please let me know. In that case, rather than doing a final exam, I'll simply create a final coding activity instead. I will only send the final exam to the DEC if the majority of your assignments have been handed in. Okay, there's no point me sending it if you're not able to pass, and if you haven't handed most assignments in, then unfortunately you're probably not going to be able to pass. Sample, oh, this I wanted to show you because people aren't always kind of asking me, I don't understand how you get my marks. This is how I get your marks. So let's say all your assignments, I totaled them up and the percentage of them was 65%. Well, that doesn't mean your final grade is 65% because remember your assignments are only worth 70%. So I times it by 0.7, which means you have 45.5 marks from your assignments. Then you get 75% on the exam, and I times that by 0.3 because your weighting for that is 30%. 75 times 0.03 is 22.5. I add them together, and you end up with 68%. So sometimes people want to skip the exam, but you can see here that even though they passed all their assignments, if they had skipped the exam, they wouldn't pass the course, right? 46 doesn't pass the course. So you really do want to do the exam because it's worth a lot more because of how it's weighted, okay? Now, in your study guide, there is a key question list. I'm not repeating it here for the simple reason that I already know that I'm changing some things. However, you are welcome to use that to kind of get yourself started and keep on track as to whether you finished things or not. Some people kind of use that as like a little checklist. Some people don't use it at all. I'm just letting you know that it is there. Okay. So when I saw the study guide, this is what I was originally was in the study guide, and I think it had kind of gotten neglected to update it. So if this is what you have, that's fine, but then this is probably a sign that you have the older study guide. This is what you should have instead, okay? Because this is the newer learning skills and works habit. Now, nothing on here directly affects the marks you receive on an assignment. However, I do find that students who are struggling with some of these work habits or these work skills may find school really challenging. So if you're not sure what's causing you difficulty, checking your learning skills is one important place to look over. I do give a little, not a grade really. We do like an N for needs improvement, S for satisfactory, G for good, E for excellence. It goes on your report card, but it doesn't change whatever marks you got in any way. It's just the kind of thing that you could look at and go, hey, my marks aren't so great. I wonder if my learning skills could have anything to do with that, and you could look that over. So one thing is responsibility. This is a hugely important one when you're working independently, which everybody kind of is for this course. You need to fulfill your responsibilities and your commitments. You need to submit your classwork, your homework, and assignments. You need to take responsibility for and manage your own behavior, right? I'm not there supervising you to say, hey, get to work right now. You kind of have to set your own plan and your own goals. I'm happy to talk to you. And if anybody wants me to like create a little schedule for them, I'll be happy to help you out that way. But again, I'm not with everybody, so I can't help you in the way of a teacher would in a classroom, right? Organization. This is the other big one I find. You need to develop and follow a plan because you can organize your time, right? But you can also organize your work and you can organize the tasks. Like I can go, okay, well, this is a big assignment, so I'm going to break it down into 5 little pieces. And I'm going to try and give myself 2 days to finish the first piece. Then I'm going to take a break, and then I'm going to spend the next 2 days finishing the second piece. And you get it kind of all planned out, okay? The other thing is that you're able to identify, gather, evaluate, and use information and technology to complete tasks, often in a researchy sense. Independent work, obviously, this is pretty much crucial. Independently monitor, assess, and revise your own plan to complete your tasks and meet goals. Use your class time, your own time really, follows instructions with minimal supervision. Now, I want to point out, you are allowed to call me. That doesn't affect your mark in any way. I have people call me 3 or 4 times a week sometimes because they want to check in with me constantly. That is absolutely fine. It is one of the things I am here for. So, but eventually you're still the one doing it, right? I'm not physically next to you kind of making you do it. So you can still get a good mark at independent work even if you're talking to me. So don't worry about that part. Collaboration is the one thing I don't think is a huge part of this learning course. Usually that's when you're working with your peers and resolving conflicts and doing group work. And there just isn't usually very much of that in this course. Initiative. This is where you are looking for and acting on new ideas and new opportunities for learning. You're having a capacity for innovating and you're able to take risks academically, right? We're not talking about snowboarding or anything. Demonstrate curiosity and interest in learning. You approach new tasks with a positive attitude. Recognize and advocate appropriately for the rights of self and others. And then finally, self-regulation. Again, this is one that in a classroom often relates to, sometimes kids are very disruptive and that kind of thing, that kind of stuff. But here, it really more relates to your ability to kind of get yourself to stay on task and to set your own goals. It kind of ties into responsibility, right? And this is hard. Like, I totally get it. One thing to think about is maybe giving yourself a little reward when you finish your assignments for the week, or, calling up a friend and just kind of talking to them, or just thinking of some way to reward yourself for getting the work done, because it is a giant task sometimes. So that part, again, I don't get to see, but I do tend to see the results of it, right? All right, so we have just started term 2A starting today. And this course will always be at 3 o'clock and it will run to 3:50 from Monday to Thursday. There are never any classes on Friday. February 17th is Family Day, so there's no classes then. There's also no classes during March break, which is March 10th to March 14th. The course lessons, like online lessons, run from February 5th to April 11th, but all your work is actually due by June 13th. Having said that, I highly recommend that your work gets handed in during May because June becomes very busy. This is especially true if this is your only course that you need to graduate, okay? You can listen to the class in multiple ways. There's online radio, there's a little link right there. There's television, Bell Express View Channel 972. You can listen to us on the radio, 91.9 FM. I'm going live right now. If you're tooling around town, you can tune in to us. You can phone the WASA studio and listen in that way. And also there's a Zoom link. I can send that to you, although it should be in your study guide as well, or you could ask the DEC and then you would just click on it. Now, occasionally some people have gotten confused and thought that that class is like always open, like I'm just sitting there, but I'm not. The rest of the day when I'm not teaching, I'm doing other things. I'm not just in that Zoom room waiting for you. So that Zoom room only opens up right at 3. If you're there even 5 minutes before 3, I may not have it open yet. So you'll have to be patient, okay? Just because I know some people got a little bit mixed up about that and were frustrated because they were checking it at times when I was not in there and they were frustrated that I wasn't in there. Okay, plagiarism policy. Plagiarism is a very serious offense. Plagiarism is essentially cheating, and it occurs when a person borrows words or ideas from a source without giving credit to the source. The use of artificial intelligence, such as ChatGPT, would also count as plagiarism. If you submit another person's work as your own, or if you copy and paste from the internet without crediting the source, or if you even copy your answer directly from the workbook, word for word, those all count as plagiarizing. If you are unsure about what is and is not plagiarism, check with your instructor. So in other words, if you've done something, you're like, I'm not sure if this is okay, I'm going to give Jill a call. Absolutely, do that. Reach out to me and I'd be happy to talk to you about it. And you could even send me a quick thing that I can look at and go, yeah, that kind of is, or no, you're okay, that's fine. If I have concerns about possible plagiarism, then I will contact you and I normally discuss the issue with the principal. If it is a recurring problem that occurs multiple times, then we will need to have a very serious discussion, okay? On-air protocol. Now, sometimes people forget when they join with me for Zoom that this goes out on the radio. So everybody, all sorts of people from young to old could be listening to this. So you want to be mindful of how you're talking, right? You want to listen and participate with the teachers and other students. Pay attention to what's being studied right then and there. Don't surf the internet. Work on current assignments. Remember to use polite language, right? It's broadcast live. We don't want to have complaints about inappropriate language. We obviously cannot have swearing, right? That's not considered acceptable on radio. And also let me know if you need to leave the room during a broadcast, especially if I only have 1 or 2 students, because it can be awkward for me to be asking a question and you've disappeared to go to the washroom, which is fine, but I don't know it and I'm standing here kind of waiting for you to answer me. Now, if you are asked a question, please answer to the best of your ability. Please don't remain silent. I never know if that means I've just lost a connection or if you're just feeling shy and confused. Also, I can feel a little silly talking to myself sometimes if you don't answer. If you didn't understand the question or you don't really know the answer, just respond with something like, I'm sorry, but I don't really know the answer, or could you rephrase that question? Or, well, I need a little more time to think of an answer. Could you call on someone else? Whatever is that is, it's just a polite way of saying, hey, I'm not ready. And that's totally fine. I will understand it, okay? Hand in work as soon as possible, okay? At the end of each work, whatever assignments you've handed in, like on Friday, send them in to me, please. Assignments should be faxed or emailed or whatever as soon as you get them done. Please do not wait until you've completed all the lessons or even an entire unit. It takes me so much longer to find the time to mark 15 assignments, which could take me an hour and a half, 2 hours, than it does to just mark 3 or 4, which could be very quickly, okay? I also need to get material from you on a regular basis so that I can make suggestions on how to improve your work. This is especially important for Unit 1, okay? Sometimes people will hand me in a whole bunch of assignments at once, and they've made the same mistake on every assignment. And if they just sent me in 1 or 2, we could have fixed it right from the start, okay? Again, you must complete the work in order to be able to write the test. I cannot just give you the test and give you whatever mark on the test. That doesn't work that way. It's also very important that I have some sort of contact phone number or email or Facebook name where I can reach you or leave a message. Now, hopefully when you registered, you gave us something, but if that's changed or it's gone out of, you lost the phone or it's changed or whatever, please contact me as soon as you get your materials and let me know how to reach you, because I need a way to send you stuff. And I also need a way to be able to have discussions with you about things like, hey, this was going great, or hey, we need to talk about this, all those kind of things, right? So please make sure I've got a way to talk to you. Now, let's say you've missed a class. That's fine. If you want to access pre-recorded classes, you go to YouTube, like I talked about at the beginning. I've got a channel and the school has a channel at once. My channel is capital G, capital P, ERCY, space, capital W, AHSA. The URL is right here. I'm not going to say it all. You can copy it down if you see it. You will need to go to the playlist for NBE 3C. Now, again, I'm still making that, right? Because this is my very first day. So it probably won't be available until tomorrow at least. And then there's a YouTube channel for the school called WASA Distance Education. Okay. And here's the general URL right there. And then again, they will also have an NBE 3C playlist. I'm not sure how quickly that goes, but might not be up till Friday. So mine will be a little bit faster probably. Okay, assignments, printed or typed? Some assignments are specifically going to ask for you to be handwritten. This is especially common when I'm asking you for a rough draft because I want to ensure that it's your own work. Generally, I also expect the exam and the final project to be handwritten as well. If you have a specific writing disability that I should be aware of, or you've broken your arm or things like that happen, right? Call me up, let me know so that we can make appropriate arrangements, okay? There are also some assignments that I don't want you to print. I specifically want you to type. If you don't have access to a computer, let me know that, and we can try and figure something out. In those cases, you could always just print as neatly as possible. If at all possible, please try and do your assignments with pen. Pencil often does not scan very well. It comes out very light and glitchy, and it can be very hard for me to read the words. Okay, handing in work. Don't just hand your work into me directly. It needs to go to the email called studentwork@nnec.on.ca. Once you do that, it's not only viewable by the office manager, but it's also viewable by another teacher if anything were to happen to me, if I got sick, if you don't finish the course next year and want to finish it. Don't finish it this year and want to finish it next year. We've always got access to it. Whereas if you only send it to my email, no one else can access it. That's why we have you do this, okay? Your work can also get scanned by the DEC, or you can fax it into us, 1-800-463-7852. And like I said, if you're going to mail it, please photocopy it because work can and has gotten lost in the mail. It does happen. So please be careful with the mailing one. So I wanted to talk briefly about using Google Documents app. If you already have another word processing program that you're comfortable using, like Microsoft Word, it's totally fine to use that for your assignments. However, if you don't have word processing software in your computer, your student account with us gives you automatic access to Google Docs, which is a word processing program available online once you are signed into your NNEC student Gmail account. Okay, so student emails. When you become a student, we create a student Google account for you through WASA, which includes a specific student Gmail. Now, if you've got an email that you use already and you're comfortable using it, that's fine. But if you don't have any email, it can be tricky for us to communicate with you about your work. The email addresses are generally set up this way: your first name and then a dot, then your last name, and then the month and the day of your birthday. And then it's always at nnecschools.org. The initial password is always WASA student. Once you go in for the first time, change your password to something original. If you forget your password, that's fine. Contact us. If you've tried to use this and it's not working, again, contact me and I'll help you get the email set up. Facebook option. I can be reached on Facebook through my teacher account. I'm going to point out, I do not check Facebook every single day because it's not one that a lot of people use. Some students will ask me questions about assignments there or even hand in assignments, by sending me a photograph there, and that's totally fine. If I haven't talked to you before, you need to make a friend request and send me a message as well, like, hi, I'm Lisa Jones. I am enrolled in your NBE 3C class. That is especially important if your Facebook name is different than your student name, so I can find you in our database. So if your Facebook name is Amy Amazing, but your legal name is Amy Gray, well, let me know so I can find you in the database. It's also important because sometimes people will have registered, but the front office won't have put you into the database yet, and I could be looking for you and not finding you. So just kind of giving me all the information is really helpful. Like I said, I check my email constantly throughout the day, but I only check my Facebook when I receive a message. So it is possible for me to miss friend requests if you've not sent a message. I still generally need an email account so I can send back your assignments. Like if you've sent me 40 pages worth of work, I can't easily send that to you on Facebook. I can send you the mark sheet, but I can't send you all the corrections and stuff. So I still need an email. But it is possible to hand in assignments that way, and some people do prefer to do it that way. Again, here's what my Facebook looks like if you're looking for me, and it's the G. Percy Wassa. Okay. Okay, Google Docs. I know a lot of people have probably used Google Docs, and if so, feel free to speed past this part. But I have students of all ages. I have students from 14 to like 64. So I know not everybody has used Google Docs, so I do cover that a little bit right here, just so that you can do it if you've never used it before. First, you'd log into your student Gmail by entering your username and your password. Once you've done that, you should see a screen, and up in the corner, you should see something that looks like this. Now, this says G for Jillian. Yours would say whatever, A for Amy, D for Doris. And then the little dots represent all the different Google apps that you have access to. And if you click on that, then a drop-down menu will appear, and it will show you a bunch of the apps. We may not always have all the exact same apps. Sometimes I have extra ones just because I'm a teacher. You would look for the little blue icon that says Docs, okay? Click on that, and then the application will open up, and it will give you several options to start. Let me show you what that looks like. So it will look a lot like this, okay? Now, if you're just doing an assignment, I would just click on the blank document, and you can start writing. It will generally start saving your work automatically. If it hasn't, please go back in and save it. In order to hand it in to me though, rather than sharing it, it's better if you download it and save it as a Word doc and then email it to me, okay? Yeah, so here it is. If you're not sure, if you've never done it before, if you hit, there's a file button up in the corner. They almost all have that. You can see it right here even. A drop-down menu will appear, and then it will say download. And if you click on download, if you go over here, it will give you some options. You can see here, file, download, options. You want to choose Microsoft Word. That's probably the easiest way to do it. The other thing you could do is you could make it a PDF if you wanted to. Probably could do plain text. If you've done anything fancy with graphics, plain text won't work very well though, just so you know. And if you're having trouble doing this, just contact me and I'll kind of try and walk you through it, all right? All right, so Unit 1. Each unit is made up of 5 lessons, blah, blah, blah. Read through all the material presented in each lesson before trying to complete the assignments. What I'm saying there is usually there's at least a page or two explaining some concepts, and then I give you the assignment. Sometimes I have students skip over all that page that explains things, and they just go to the assignment, and the assignment is like 3 sentences, and they're like, I don't understand how to do this. Well, yeah, you got to read all the information first, okay? That's really, really important in this course, okay? Like I said, once you finish an assignment, send it in as quickly as you can. You can wait till you've completed the unit, but I beg you, please don't, okay? Important words are highlighted in boldface type. You might want to keep a separate notebook to list or define any important words or concepts that you're having trouble understanding. Understanding new vocabulary can be a really key part of successfully completing this course because this is a college level course. So sometimes the vocabulary is a little bit more challenging than what you may have seen if you haven't taken a college course before, right? For some people, this is their first college level course. All right, we talked about that already. That's okay. Okay, if you see the key, you have to do the question. Occasionally there's a spot where you see a few questions that are just meant to get you thinking, and there's no key. Now, having said that, sometimes you'll see the key and it will be, let me think how to put this. It'll be right next to the thing that says like assignment 32 part A. And then you'll go down, 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 down. And down here, it might be part B. That key still counts for both sections. Just because there isn't a key next to this part doesn't mean it. There aren't many assignments in here that aren't actual assignments, like that are just kind of thinking questions. But there are one or two that I know it's been a bit of a problem where people were sad that they did work they didn't get marked on. Okay, this is the table of contents for the entire thing. And like I said, these are talking about the concept. Lesson 1 is thinking about identity. Lesson 2 is names and stereotypes. Lesson 3 is short stories. Lesson 4 is 7 grandfather teachings. And lesson 5 is personal goals. And then we're moving on to unit 2. Lesson 6, Aboriginal storytelling. Lesson 7, trickster stories. Lesson 8, contemporary legends. Lesson 9, remembering traditions. Lesson 10, legend and creation. Then unit 3, lesson 11 is an apology. Lesson 12, truth and reconciliation. Lesson 13, perspectives in children's literature. Lesson 14, muffins for granny. Lesson 15, the film review. And then we've got unit 4, lesson 16, social justice. Lesson 17, heroes. Lesson 18, research skills number 1. Lesson 19, research skills number 2. Lesson 20, final report and media texts. Okay, so lesson 1 is all about thinking about identity. What is in a name? So despite the problematic nature of the word, which has sometimes been used in a very derogatory fashion and began due to an explorer's really bad sense of direction, the reference to Indian is still actually a legal category in Canada, which is kind of a bit odd still to me. But in Canada, for example, the Indian Act of 1876 gave the federal government jurisdiction over and the right to establish the criteria for who would be considered Indian and who could claim rights, vote in band councils, and all those kinds of things. The Indian Act has gone through several amendments since 1876, but it is still an active law. In other words, it's still current and still enforced, that governs the relationship between the Canadian government and those whom it considers status Indians. Indian is therefore remains a significant and contested and somewhat controversial legal identity for Indigenous peoples. The source from this, by the way, is Story Nations at the University of Toronto on the term of Indians, which I know is very controversial, and I apologize. It does come up. So in modern times, other words are often considered far more appropriate. Some of the many possibilities include Indigenous, Native, First Nations, or Aboriginal. In Canada, the typical term to make sure you're including everybody is First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, to be sure that all the different Indigenous groups are recognized and acknowledged. Some people may identify most strongly with the language that's used in their area, such as Ojibwe or Ojibwe. Others may feel more comfortable identifying themselves by their band membership, such as Casablanca First Nations. Because we're going to be studying different historical documents, there's going to be a variety of terms used, some of them politically correct, some of them very politically correct. I have no way of altering those historical documents. So some of those names and designations may make you feel uncomfortable, and my apologies in advance for that difficulty. I will try to use that as little as possible. It will come up though, and I'm just kind of giving you a heads up so you're aware of that and not startled by it, okay? So then we get to the main introduction. Rather than Aboriginal communities themselves, Canada, the government, has historically legislated who they consider Indian through the use of the Indian Act. And this has caused some problems. All people are constantly developing our own sense of identity from birth to the end of our lives. Our identity is often thought of as our sense of ourself, and we build it based on our relationships to relatives, friends, community, geography, language, and other social factors. Identity plays a key role in our lives. When a child feels a sense of belonging to family, community, and peers, he or she is better able to deal with adversity, which is like hard times, basically. Prior to contact with Europeans, First Nations had their own histories and their own methods of determining identity. For example, there were matriarchal or female-led systems, patriarchal, sorry, I'm saying that badly, patriarchal, male-led systems, or clan and kinship systems. Before Europeans came to North America, First Nations communities or nations were sovereign nations. That is, they were self-governing. Oral history is supported by the work of anthropologists and historians and illustrate that there was a complex system of governments. First Nations people also had their own laws and systems of justice, and those systems were characterized by oral teachings, collectivities, and consensus. Consensus was when people agree on stuff. Okay, political systems. First Nations people relied on a variety of distinctive and cultural ways to organize their political systems and institutions. Later, many of these customs were ignored or legally suppressed, while the federal government attempted to impose a uniform set of vastly different Euro-Canadian political ideas on First Nation societies through various legislative acts. Legislative acts is a fancy way of they made laws, right? So I remember hearing one time a man on the plane, and he was very frustrated because the traditional system of selecting a chief in his particular band was very different than what is currently laid out in the law. And he was very frustrated that he felt that they weren't able to use the traditional way because the government has basically decided this is the way it gets done. And that's kind of still having some impact, right? One point that may not be clear from all this that we're discussing is that there was no one true way to organize the social or governmental systems of traditional First Nations people. Every different group decided on what worked best for them. So some tribes were matriarchies, where the women were the main leaders and decision makers. Other tribes were patriarchies, where men were the main leaders. All these kinds of differences were one of the things that got suppressed by the Europeans. They were kind of only used to one certain system, and they really had a hard time adjusting, and that is still kind of the case, I think. Okay, so our big theme for this is, what does identity mean to you? So your goal, as you're reading through the writing in this unit, the goal is for you to gain an understanding of the identities revealed by the writers and to reflect on their ideas and make connection to your own thoughts about your own identity. Now, identity may be an issue you've spent a great deal of time thinking about, or it might be a concept you've never really explored before. You're also going to end up using the internet to research information about a variety of writers. Many Aboriginal writers have devoted a great deal of time and energy answering the question, who am I? Which is a perennial question that people have asked throughout the centuries. In this unit, you are going to look at literary texts and media works devoted to this topic of identity, and specifically how different Aboriginal people have defined it for themselves. All right, so key question number 1, part 1. And you can see our little key there saying, hey, this is important, you got to do this. Throughout this course, you'll be introduced to different Indigenous writers, leaders, and artists. Often, before you read a new text from a new author, there will be like a little mini research project to help you learn a little bit more about that person. Having that information can sometimes help you understand a text more effectively. For our first assignment, that is exactly what we're going to do. So this is key question number 1, part 1, or in some of yours, it might say part A. I'm going to put that in brackets just because there's a few differences there. Using the internet, read information about Drew Hayden Taylor. In point form, create a list of 5 things you've learned about his life and his notoriety. Include 2 different websites where you found information. Use the chart below to record your information. Please make sure to include interesting and relevant information for each one of the 5 things you record. So the recording chart looks like this. So there's room for like a good sentence for each one of these, and then 2 different internet sources. Okay. Reliable internet sources. It's extremely important that you use reliable internet sources for your information. But how do you decide what's considered reliable? Well, one, more recently written commentary is usually considered more reliable, as it may include less stereotypes or more recently discovered information. Number two, information that's been fact-checked by other people, especially other Indigenous people and organizations. Sometimes the official story told by government sources may not include the whole story or may not include the viewpoint of the Native people involved or being discussed. Number three, again, facts from reliable organizations. Organizations whose history, purpose, and accuracy have been confirmed by multiple sources are good references to use. Number four, the information that is on the site cannot be just changed arbitrarily by random individuals. And then number five, there's also primary sources. These are the original history documents. These are often considered more valuable than secondary sources. Secondary sources are where people are talking about the primary sources. You do have to be mindful of stereotypes and prejudices when viewing these materials. Now, this kind of almost sounds a little bit like here I'm saying more recently written commentary. I'm going to point out for secondary sources, okay? Sometimes if you're reading commentary that might have been written at the time, there may be a whole bunch of things that they weren't aware of, and there may be a lot of prejudice in it. So the information is not being summarized fairly or being suppressed or things like that. But if you're looking at the actual history documents, like say you want to know what the treaty says, going to the actual treaty to read it is way more valuable, or at least equally valuable, to reading commentary about the treaty, right? That way you know for sure with your own eyes what it actually says, okay? So I want to address this issue. Anytime you do an internet search, Wikipedia is almost always one of the first websites that will come up. However, is Wikipedia considered reliable? Well, Wikipedia is written by many different individuals, some of whom may not have even had the qualifications to write on the topics that they are addressing. There have been numerous hoaxes where various events or even people have been invented out of nowhere. Other times, people with a grudge against someone have deliberately written false or misleading information in order to hurt someone. And finally, Wikipedia entries can be changed by many different people who have access to the database. And due to its size, not all those changes can be monitored effectively. So due to all these issues, Wikipedia is generally not considered a reliable resource for quoting in college and university sources. But it can be a good starting point because usually at the bottom of their entries, they'll have a whole list of like internal leaks or, um, internal links or external resources, and it will link up to where they got the information from. And those are often more reliable, right? So if there's a Wikipedia article on a treaty, and then it links to a Globe and Mail article about the treaty, that is probably reliable, right? So that's what you have to kind of think about. So I would prefer that you did not use Wikipedia for these internet research articles because of this problem, okay? Why do we always use at least two sources? We use at least two sources to make sure that the facts agree with each other. If one article states a piece of information is this, and the second article states the exact opposite, you may have to do some more reading to see which one is actually true. Also, sometimes one article might focus on one part of someone's life, like their political career, while a different article might be focusing on their well-known skills as an artist. Using more than one source helps us to make sure that we're getting a well-rounded and accurate picture of the person we're doing the research on, okay? Okay, so what are considered some reliable sources? This is by no means exhaustive. This is just me giving you a few examples. Major newspapers such as Toronto Star, the Globe and Mail, the Chronicle, Indigenous media sources such as Wawate News, Windspeaker, Nations Magazine, APTN News, CBC Indigenous, Turtle Island News. Historical organizations and databases such as the Canadian Encyclopedia, Historica Canada, the Dictionary of Canadian Biography, primary sources, so the actual text of actual treaties, recordings of speeches made, historical newspaper articles and journals, and then publishing companies I've found art magazines, book reviews. They may also have biographical information about the writer included in their content that would usually be pretty reliable, okay? Now, this is the big one. Remember to put the facts in your own words, okay? This is a very important skill to learn, especially for a college level course. You cannot just copy word for word from an internet article. You must look at the information, decide what's important, and then rephrase it in your own words. So here's an example of what I mean. The paragraph on the next slide is from the Canadian Encyclopedia. Read it and think about what might be one important fact you could tell me about Tecumseh. Now, I just want to point out, this is one paragraph out of literally pages of information, okay? If I tried to do the entire thing, though, that would take us way too long. So this is not my writing. This is from the Canadian Encyclopedia. Tecumseh's first visit to Canada. In 1808, an unknown Tecumseh made his first visit to Canada at Fort Amherstburg, later Fort Malden, Upper Canada, in the place of his better-known brother who had been invited by William Claus. He arrived the 8th of June. Tecumseh was not enthusiastic to take the king by the hand. He was deeply distrustful of the British. Nevertheless, the two sides met, and Tecumseh established himself with the Redcoats and raised his standing among the First Nations. In spring 1809, Tecumseh made the first of his journeys in the cause of Indigenous unity among the Seneca and Wyandot peoples in Ohio and the Six Nations in New York. He had developed into a fiery orator with a clear message. The First Nations must stand together to save their land and culture. Okay, so how do I put things in my own words? Let's say I wanted to make sure I got that first sentence. In 1808, an unknown Tecumseh made his first visit to Canada, la la la. What's another way to say this? I can rephrase it. Tecumseh visited Canada in 1808 to meet the king called William Claus. So I've taken out some of the minor details and just kind of kept the main focus. And then maybe I want to combine the last two sentences from the previous paragraph into one sentence that's a bit easier to read. And again, that gets the main idea without all the details. You can never use all the details, it's too much, okay? In 1809, Tecumseh began to meet various tribes in Ohio and New York to speak on the topic of Indigenous unity, to try to convince people that the First Nations people needed to work together to help preserve their way of life. Now, I used quotation marks around the phrase Indigenous unity because I wanted to show that I used that precisely from the original article. I wasn't sure if that is that person's own phraseology or if there's actually like an official concept called Indigenous unity. So I put it in brackets just to kind of be sure. I didn't want to rephrase that in case it was like an official phraseology, okay? So you are going to be looking up Mr. Drew and see what you can find. Tell me 5 facts. And I want to point out one thing. I've got just a minute or two of time. Occasionally I've had people do things like this, and I'm going to discourage you to not do this, okay? Do not do this. They take one fact and they split it up and like get a bunch of little tiny itty bitty facts out of it. And again, this is a college level course, guys. It's just not, okay. So it'll say, he is an author. He wrote 36 books. By the way, guys, this is not true. I'm just making this up. He won an award for some books. Okay, so those are 3 sentences that could easily have been transformed into one nice sentence. Okay, so like Drew is an author who wrote 36 books and won an award for one titled, and then you give me the title. Again, this is not accurate. Don't use this, okay? I'll be on the lookout. But see how rather than breaking it up into like little tiny mini facts, I made one kind of detailed, interesting sentence as my fact, okay? So as a grade 11 college course, this is the kind of detail I'm expecting, all right? That way, when you go into reading, you also have a little bit of knowledge about what time frame the person wrote in, what they were like, what they faced, what they're known for, and it does make it easier to read their work, okay? So this is just part 1 of the assignment. We will look at part 2 tomorrow and probably question number 2. If anybody does not have their materials to get started, please send me an email and I'd be happy to try and get that going for you. And I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Have a good night.